Welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. Problem solvers have problems too. So here at Behind the Podium, I, Jared Cohen, and my co-host Alexander Ellis discuss the struggles, philosophies, demands, and practices of the coach, or said more broadly, health and wellness practitioner. To provide quality coaching is to enhance someone's life in an everlasting and unfolding way. This is not easy and requires a lot of due diligence and self-mastery on the part of the coach to be able to perform. So without further ado, join us as we dig deeper into the depths of the coach's mind. Welcome back, or welcome to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. I am Jared Cohen with my partner in crime,
Alexandra Ellis.
And today we go behind the podium with a coach, doctor of physical therapy, soccer player, basketball player, marathoner, CrossFitter, rock climber, teacher, movement specialist, insatiable learner, and lover of poke bowls. Specifically, this guest of ours is a maestro of her craft. As a clinician, she analyzes the way you move in order to determine the source of your pain so she can treat the problem, not just the symptoms. In addition to being a physical therapist, our guest is a board-certified orthopedic clinical specialist. When not working with clients one-on-one, she can also be found teaching courses for Rock Tape. Without further ado, it is mine and Alex's pleasure to welcome Dr. Shante Cofield, aka the Movement Maestro, to Behind the Podium.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
This is awesome. I love this.
The infamous Movement Maestro.
Yeah, something like that, right? Something like that.
Yeah, let's start there. Where did the name come from?
So the name, I kind of stumbled upon it. I originally started everything as the Movement Mechanic, just for the alliteration. Mm-hmm. And I started my website basically just to have a landing platform because I was trying to offer services in my CrossFit box in Brooklyn. And if you've done CrossFit, you know that oftentimes if you go in the morning, the afternoon people don't know you. If you go in the afternoon, the morning people don't know you.
True.
So while I tried to go to a bunch of different classes, I couldn't go to all of them. So I wanted to just have a landing page for people to know, like, oh, that's who she is. And so I built it. I started posting some stuff on Facebook initially. And I got a lot more followers very quickly than I thought. And I was like, oh, I should make sure this name isn't taken before I continue with this. And it was taken. It's actually it was copyrighted, trademark, whatever, by some massage therapists out in Colorado as the Movement Mechanics. Huh. So I was just looking for alliteration, and Maestro kept popping up into my head, and I went back and forth with it because no one knows how to say or spell Maestro. And so I was like, do I want to use this? Do I really want to, go through with this? And I was like, you know what? I saw a great quote from one of the characters from Orange is the New Black. And her name is really difficult to say. And her mom said, you know what? You tell people your name because people figured out how to spell and say Tchaikovsky. They will figure out your name. And so I said, all right, we're going to stick with Maestro. I didn't love it, but now I do. It just kind of evolved. And I'm like, all right, I'm the Maestro. And people started calling me the Maestro. Like, hey, Maestro. And I was like, I guess it's that.
That's awesome. You're like Batman.
Yeah, right?
It's bigger than you. I can understand where it's maybe spelled wrong, but what are the different ways people say it?
Maestro. So when they see it,
oh.
Then they say Maestro, which is like if you were going to say it is in Spanish or whatever, yeah, it'd be like Maestro, Maestra. But the way that we say it here is Maestro, and so a lot of people kind of say it as they read it, and they're like, the Movement Maestro, and you're like, okay, that's close enough, I guess.
It's nice try. Better luck next time. And for our listeners who are not aware, Shante has a huge Instagram account dropping knowledge bombs every single night, right?
Every night. The Daily Maestrism drops around 7 p.m. And by around 7 p.m., I mean anywhere from 7 to about 10:30 p.m. Standard time. Because of traveling, it gets kind of caught up. I try to drop it at 7 Pacific Standard Time, but It comes out every night. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every night, I have days that go by where I'm like, I can't be bothered to post anything. And I'm so impressed, like every single
that
day.
Consistency.
Consistency is key. You know that. Everything.
Nice.
Try to put something out there. Keeps the brain going.
Oh yeah. And I always learn something too from everything you post, and it's always relevant to what I need to read too. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you for reading. I learn from it. You know, when you go to post something, you always kind of sift through it when you're making the caption and you're like, does this make sense? Are there a million ways that someone's going to come and try and attack this? And so you really have to, at least in my opinion, you know, I really sit there and edit it a lot. And so it makes you really own the material and be like, yeah, like, I stand behind this. I support it. And if someone disagrees, that's great. Let's have a discussion about it. So it's a win-win. I learn too.
That's, you know, a very optimistic and positive spin of the trolls of the internet.
And the hard work to staying consistent.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
Trolls,
it's
man.
true. Being able to externalize your thoughts like that and put them out for public consumption totally and should make you that much more critical and involved in kind of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Absolutely.
Well, I really like this because we have talked a lot about titles and branding and what do you call yourself and what does it mean to you? What does it mean to others? And I know on this show, we use coach as kind of an all-encompassing term for how we're thinking about the way in which you provide service to another. And you are not alone. We've had guests on before who've been like, well, I'm not like a coach per se, like I'm teaching classes regularly. So they're kind of like, I don't know if this is a good fit. So I'm curious for you, just when you think of the word coach, what does that mean to you? And where does some of that perception come from?
I think this, you know, when you wrote that email to me last night answering that question, it was spot on. I've been thinking about this actually beforehand, and just verbiage, right? The way we frame things makes a huge difference in how people interpret them, internalize them, view things. And I think the way that you guys have described coach is spot on, right? It's a very all-encompassing term. I think people have come to associate it more with performance, whether it's physical performance or just life performance. You know, life coaching has become a really big thing. And it has such a positive, in my opinion, positive connotation. To that end, I wonder if we could get rid of, I mean, I'm a physical therapist, you know, obviously by trade. I wonder if we could kind of move away from this term physical therapist. And if you started saying, I'm going to coach your movement, how much more positive would someone be in viewing that? And how much more likely would they be to come see you and do stuff and do what you've asked them to do? I think as soon as you hear the word physical therapy, it becomes very medical, it becomes very clinical, it becomes very insurance-based. And it's a different prognosis right off the bat. You talk that, hey, I'm going to go for coaching today, or this is my coach, hugely different. Yeah. It already puts you in a frame of I'm performing, I'm healthy, I'm working towards something that I want to be doing. It's so different. And yet, you know, the two people are doing the same thing, but just how you framed it makes a big difference. And I couldn't agree more. Like I absolutely do view myself in the way that you've described coach. And I was mulling around playing around with the idea of how to make a blog post about it, and just discussing that is how we use that word and how we view ourselves in my case as a physical therapist. And if we could kind of change that so that people get a better outlook on things.
Well, even the word therapy, I think, is fascinating because, and I would even go as far as to say that, like, there's still a huge stigma around therapy in the classic sense of like mental therapy, right? Exactly. And that like maybe you'd get a pass, or internally you'd feel more comfortable telling someone I'm going to a physical therapist than like just saying I'm seeing my therapist. And I recently thought about, or not so recently, but when I got involved in Yoga Tune-Up, I remember kind of thinking like, the way, because they'll refer to the balls as therapy balls. And I always liked that. I felt like in some ways that was sort of like taking back the word therapy a little bit. That like, like these are some balls that like I'm going to use myself. And like there's something, the fact that I'm performing therapy on myself, like that seems different. So
it's empowering.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So just the way you frame things and the way that people have framed things, pain science is really at the forefront of everything right now. And pain science is drawing so many of its roots from psychology.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is we're finally starting to realize or appreciate the fact that we're treating humans, not tables, and that emotional components are huge and can be drivers in so many different things. And as such, what you say can be so much more important, and typically is so much more important than what you're doing, the mechanical aspect of things. Right? What is this person's thoughts, perceptions, beliefs surrounding this? That's going to dictate and affect everything. So the verbiage you use makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I think mindset too for the patient or person working on stuff. How many times have, because like I worked with people too, and we're doing all of the things and nothing's helping, and they're like, well, I don't really think anything's going to work. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you think that nothing is going to work, this will always be the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The patient doesn't buy into treatment, it doesn't work. Doesn't matter how good your techniques are, how many continuing ed classes you've got, how much knowledge you have, how smart you are, when you scored on your test, it doesn't matter. If the patient doesn't buy in, it doesn't work. Plain and simple.
Are you familiar with the Explain Pain book?
Absolutely. David Butler, Laura Mosley, huge influences for me. I mean, I took their graded motor imagery and Explain Pain course. I was fortunate to take it from David Butler at the end of last year.
Oh, wow.
And, to me, it's mind-blowing that as a physical therapist, the number one thing that people come to see us for is pain. And yet we don't have a specific pain course in school.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
That's insane.
You know what I mean? We have, the way that we talk about it in rock statements like that is we want software solutions for software problems. If it's a nervous system we're thinking, if it's emotional, things like that, those are software. If it's you broke something, you broke a bone, that's hardware.
Right.
So much involving pain or surrounding pain has software components. And yet all that we learn in school are mechanical or hardware interventions. You have pain, I'm going to massage it away. I'm going to crack it out of you. I'm going to exercise it out of you. All right, that is a component to things, but we need to learn about the software issues there too. And we don't have that course in school. I think that should be the number one thing that we go over in school. That course was amazing. That book is great. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great resource.
That book is amazing. Yeah, digestible
by everyone. It's not just for clinicians or anything like that. Like, this is a great resource for anyone and everyone.
Yeah. Ben Ramos, who we've had on the podcast twice now, he referred that to me, and it was great because it not only helped me with my own sort of digesting my own pain experience and giving me some more tangible ways to kind of think about what's happening and maybe even kind of take me off the hook of it a little bit in understanding how the like neuro pain tags can be lasting longer than any actual problem.
Absolutely.
And then additionally, I've brought this book up now a bunch of times to a bunch of my sports psychology classmates because they even refer to imagery and this idea of like just the fact of being able to mentally rehearse what you're going to do in a pain-free way has so much efficacy for breaking through. So
absolutely. They talk about that, their graded motor imagery protocol, which in a clinical setting, we're thinking about patients that have like complex regional pain syndrome or phantom limb pain, but it applies to everyone. And you're starting to see the science behind it. Before people are like, oh, visualization, it's hokey.
Yeah.
Explain Pain is bringing the science and saying, hey, you're changing your brain. This is why it's been working for years and years, because it's science.
Yeah.
And people are buying into it, and it's great. You see it across the board, whether you're really impaired or you're the high-level athlete. This works for everyone. Why? Because you all have a nervous system and you all have a brain.
Yeah.
It's working on. Wow. Pretty cool stuff, for sure. Yeah. Very cool stuff. Probably one of the main books that I recommend to, like you've been doing, to recommend to anyone and everyone, because it's applicable across the board.
Yeah. Fascinating. I remember listening to your podcast on Joe DeLeo.
Yeah.
And and how you made the distinction between patients versus clients. So again, even that dynamic, does someone think of themselves as a client of yours or a patient? And how does that change their experience in actually being proactive in their own healing?
The way that I framed it now, and it's basically, I think that it's based on the setting and how you're getting paid. If someone's going through insurance, they tend to be a patient. If someone's stage-based or whatever, fee-for-service, and that's kind of how you learn it in school, then you kind of consider them clients, students, whatever you will. Then they get a different name already. What's been great is basically that the model that I've now adopted, where all of whoever I'm seeing, for whatever reason, they pretty much all come from social media, word of mouth, things like that. I'm not coming referring from doctors, anything like that. They're self-motivated. They want to get better. They're usually pretty educated, too, about their bodies and about movement and things like that. Like Alex.
Yeah.
Yep, that's me.
And it makes things a lot easier. Prognosis is already better because I don't have a person coming in that says nothing's going to make me better or I can't get better or the worst one, fix me. And I'm like, you are not a car. I cannot fix you. I can facilitate
You
things.
are not a car.
I cannot fix you. So I tend to try and like to think of them more as that client realm, or for some people, students even, because I've had people come and they just want to talk. They are actually students of something, and they're just coming in to talk about movement or try to move better, things like that. There's no specific pathology that we're addressing. So it is that, again, framing things. It's a great point you bring up.
Yeah, and as you said, students, hopefully we're continuing to move past this idea of when you tell someone like, oh, I'm going to see this practitioner, the follow-up isn't like, oh, what's wrong?
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. And I mean, I even think about it in terms of like, if you were in school and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to see my tutor, and people be like, oh, are you having trouble? Like, no, not necessarily. I just
exactly. If you need help, it means that something's wrong. You're like, no, shouldn't frame it like that. We need a lot of reframing of a lot of things.
Yeah, we do.
Oh boy. So
I was like, even when you nap too, people are like, oh, are you sick? Is that why you're
right?
napping? I'm like, no, because I just need like 12 hours of sleep a day. What's wrong with that? I just like sleep, okay?
Yeah, that power nap is not a sign of weakness.
Right?
No.
So you can so true.
Just thinking smarter. All right.
So one of the other models, frameworks we've discussed on this podcast is what I have come up with as the 3 X's. So this originally came to me as a model to represent quality coaching, and now I've even started thinking about it in terms of what I would actually want to use as my own philosophy of practice for viewing clients within. So that I'm interested in someone's experience, their willingness to experiment with new things and be comfortable with the uncomfortability of being able to change whatever has been the default. And then lastly, how they're living this thing that they are striving for, or setting that example, the 3rd X, for others. So I figured we could start with that because I think you are a great representation of this. You obviously have tons of experience. Your social media is very evident of how much you're experimenting and going to new courses, wanting to meet with different types of students and practitioners. And then, of course, I love that you are so open about like, hey, I'm trying all these things. I'm practicing what I preach, but at the same time, I too am struggling and have movement things that I haven't figured out myself. So using that as a way to give us a little bit more of your background. As for the experience piece, how have coaches and mentors of yours since becoming a physical therapist shaped your approach to coaching and providing service?
So I think that my brand, the Maestro, has become so closely associated with my mentor's brand, Perry Nicholson of Stop Chasing Pain. And, it's been a true honor when I get tagged in posts and he's tagged too. You're just like, holy smokes. We're very close. I text him, I talk to him all the time. But the past 2 years, 3 years has been a whirlwind to go from where you see this person, you're learning from this person, and now suddenly you're getting tagged and referenced with this person is incredible. Perry Nicholson, Stop Chasing Pain. He's a chiro, probably my number one mentor or coach, if you will. And the main thing that he instilled in me and that I see him living every day is to follow your passion. Do what makes you happy. The quote I always hear is, be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. He is out there living his dream. I don't want to say the dream because that's different for everybody, but he is doing him and he is unapologetic about it. And that's something that is scary to do at first, but once you start, you never look back because you're kind of like, how can I go back? It's not possible. And that's something that I've definitely taken with me and carry with me every day from him.
How did you get introduced to him and his work?
Social media.
Wow.
I guess maybe it might have been Instagram or Facebook. I don't know, something like that. I took a long time to take a rock tape course. Now, obviously, I love that company. But when I was looking for courses after I graduated, kinesio tape is the bigger name. And so I was waiting for a course to come around. One of my colleagues took a kinesio tape course, and its methodology, it didn't really sit well with me. But rock tape was not a known name, and you kind of lean towards courses that have bigger names, and the provider and the brand. So I was like, okay, well, this is rock tape thing, but kinesio tape's the bigger one, but I don't really know if I agree with it wholeheartedly. It's a lot of money. And then I saw that Perry taught for rock tape after following his stuff, and then I was like, I'm going to take it for him, not for the course,
we were
but
just talking
because
about
I want to learn from him. And then it literally just snowballed. It snowballed from there. It was just that. I text him so frequently about it. I'm just like, you changed my life because he did. That course that weekend was a huge turning point for me, and my life has been different since that day.
When did you first take this course with him?
The years get so blurred. Maybe 3 years. I was looking at the other day. I was like, when did I even take that thing? Maybe I think it was 3 years ago that I took it. And then because the instructor onboarding process is a little bit lengthy, which is good because they want to make sure that you are committed and you know what the heck you're doing. So I think it was about 3 years ago that I took it, and it's been incredible since. Incredible.
That's so awesome. And I so too agree about living your passion and doing what lights you up, and then acknowledging that, sometimes that is a little bit scary. And you're like, I kind of would like to go back to the safety of that bubble, but I know that that's just like a slow death for me.
That's exactly it. You can't. The golden handcuffs, or whatever they call them. You can't go back. You just can't. I literally cannot do it. I will struggle, but I will figure it out to continue on this path.
Yeah, and one thing I've been continually reminding myself is look, this is all just temporary. This is today. This is not forever, especially when you are working to move that needle forward in whatever way it is each day.
Absolutely. I'm obviously really tied into social media, and one of the things that you see is that everything looks great. You see all the good stuff. That was the post I did, 2 days ago, something like that. Some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue. Every day isn't the best. And on social media, it can have you believe otherwise. Oh, it's great, and look at this, my overnight success that took 10 years. You just haven't seen the behind the scenes of it. It's that ups and downs, but at the end of the day, reminding yourself, that's like you said, nothing is permanent. This too will get better. And kind of just inching forward. Because the thing is, as long as you're following your passion and you're happy, the universe conspires. It really does. It really, really does.
What has been the biggest struggle for you in staying true to your passion?
Probably balance. Because I did a post about this too. Even too much of a good thing is not a good thing.
Yeah.
And while people may be like, you're living the dream, you travel and you work for a company that you work, talk about movement all day and you get paid for it and you live by the beach. That sounds great. It is great. But I also travel a lot. And I also do a lot of stuff on social media, like you said. And that, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're like, oh, there's not many hours left in the day to do much else. Which is not the worst thing, but it's also not sustainable. You have to have balance. Because even if you have what quote unquote looks to be a good thing, if I'm on the road 3 weeks in a row, that's a lot. I have to take time off. And it's easy to get caught up and be like, okay, I'll take that course, I'll teach there because it's a new group of students. I want to have an outreach to them. Like, I love this stuff. It's balance. Again, always about balance. Finding that.
Yeah, and the travel too. I always thought like, oh, how glamorous to be traveling. And about like my second travel trip, I was like, I just want to be home. Like, I don't want to eat airport food and be in a hotel.
I travel a lot, and you see those hotel beds. We talked about that. Just dealing with that, it can get to you. Those sheets, untucking all those sheets. So
taking off all the throw pillows. Come on, people.
Like 5 years of my life that I'm going to lose doing
just
that.
Untucking sheets that are overly tucked in hotels. They make it like a sarcophagus almost, where you're like, oh my God, I can't move in here.
I just struggle. I know.
Speaking of balance, we've talked about this with a few guests before in terms of social media. Is how do you balance your time on social media with regard to the time you're going to spend for your own production of content versus any time you may spend consuming the content of colleagues and others in the field? And is that difficult, like, to separate or not get too sucked into comparing yourself to what others are doing?
That's a great question. So it all blends together in terms of time-wise. It's kind of like you're scrolling, sometimes then you're posting. Maybe you scroll through and it gives you an idea as to what you want to be posting about. Or you scroll through and you're like, this concept keeps coming up a lot. Maybe I should do more research on it. I like things like blood flow restriction. I know that's where I first came across it.
Right.
Yeah.
You see it on social media a lot, and you're like, everyone's talking about this. What the heck is going on with this? And so
I just saw that last night.
It's everywhere. It's a hot topic. In terms of how that relates to posting and not comparing yourself to others, that's something I think that becomes one. I think I've been doing it long enough now where it doesn't bother me as much. But it's always tempting to do that,
right?
And you can't.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. And this is like one of the things that if I am going to say I am a coach is that I get probably more inquiries and asked to go to dinner and things like that and meet with people when I travel because they want to start something on social media or they want to create a presence or they want to leave their job. Kind of that whole realm.
Yeah.
More so than movement stuff. It's like, hey, I want to change. And I actually love talking about that stuff. And so, we discuss the social media thing. And that's always a big point is that I try to make is don't compare yourself to others. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't track that thing because you're going to drive yourself crazy. If you think about the consumer from social media, yes, I like to think that I have a very educated following, but the entire world is on social media.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to figure out the likes, wants, needs, interests of the entire population, you're never going to figure that out. And you're like, but this person likes this, but they didn't like that. You put out what's true to you. You put out what you can stand behind, and that's it. Other people's accounts may grow faster, and that's fine. It may make you want to drag, pull your hair out. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You have to, as long as you're doing you, following your passion. That is the number one thing. The bigger balance issue is balancing social media time and life because I know I'm on my phone all the time, which my wife doesn't love. And I'm working on it. I'm always like, I'm building an empire. I think actually I'm just addicted to it.
Right.
So
it's a fine line.
Working on cutting back on that. But it's you got to compare yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
And do what you enjoy doing.
Right. Good to hear.
Worry about the numbers. Don't worry about the numbers.
Yeah, I know. It's so true, too, because also things fluctuate, and if you're like, oh, well, I got, this many likes on that picture and this one didn't get that many likes, but
no.
It's like, oh, my gosh.
There's no way to figure it out. The algorithms are crazy. You know, if something gets liked quickly, as it relates to Instagram, something gets liked quickly or reshared quickly, the algorithms pick that up and it promotes that picture more, that video more. So you may have a post that you think is fire and you put it out, nothing. You put out a random thing and it blows up. I put up that ice video, me suffering in the ice bath. 166,000 views.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. The most I typically get on a video is like 5,000 or so, 8,000, around there. 166,000 views. I didn't even say anything smart in that video.
No, you just sat there suffering.
Crying. The caption wasn't even smart. It was just like, I'm tagging, and it blew up. So you never know. People like entertainment at the end of the day. That's really what it comes down to.
Yes.
So
like to watch you suffer. I watched it a few times. Like, oh my God, she's crazy.
See that? Yeah, this is what blew up. So you just put it out there. Make sure it's what makes you happy, and you'll be good.
Yeah, you're never gonna please everybody.
You never. So stop trying.
Except apparently with an ice bath, I guess.
Ice bath is hot now.
It really is hot. It really is.
But I want to go back to the blood flow restriction because I did just stumble across where somebody was doing like basically like a single leg deadlift with this blood flow restriction. I was like, excuse me? What have you uncovered so far? I know nothing about this yet.
Blood flow is actually not a new thing. It's been around for a long time. Bodybuilders really started it. And now it's being moved, and I'm going to say now it's being made public. But it's moving into the clinical setting, and so they're making it a bit more scientific. They're using pressure cuffs so you can gauge just how much pressure you're applying to the area. And it's really nice in the clinical setting because a lot of the times if someone has an injury, they cannot perform maximal contractions of tissues, right? And you need those contractions in order to build muscle. So what this does is it requires less of a maximal contraction, because you're not actually, it's blood flow restriction, but what actually is happening is you're not letting the blood leave the area as opposed to you're not letting it come to the area. That's actually the differentiation there.
Oh, okay.
And so it requires less effort in order to have the same kind of cascade so that you can start to build tissue and build muscle in that area, which from a perspective of someone who is injured is great. If you had an ACL tear, one of the things we see after ACLs, right? Your quad, I had ACL, right? Your quad never comes back to the same size. And initially, when you're trying to load that thing, you just don't have the strength. You don't have the capability to load it enough to hypertrophy those muscles. This gives you a way to do that. And now they're making it clinical. Johnny Owens, I think is his name. Johnny Owens is really doing a lot. He had a good podcast out with PT Finecast. Which is where I learned, really heard a lot about it, and then did some more research.
So just to reiterate that, you said it's important for people to distinguish between blood not getting there versus blood not leaving there, and the effect that's happening here of importance is the fact that blood isn't leaving the area of intent that you're trying to contract,
whatever the target area is.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever the target area is, which I didn't realize until I listened to the podcast. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not really sure that it was working. But that was an interesting fact. And I was like, oh, okay. Occlusion. I think there's one
occlusion, right.
Yeah. Because when I first saw it, I was thinking of, like voodoo bands and some of that, which is similar, right?
Yeah. Similar, actually. Yes, similar. Typically with voodoo bands, one of the things that the way that you're using them, you can use them in that way. They are not marketed that way because of safety issues, I want to say, for right now, because you don't know how much pressure to be put on. People will go crazy because the pendulum always swings too far. The way that people are using voodoo bands is for fascial work and working on it's just a tack and floss technique where you apply the band, it holds that tissue down, you move through the range of motion, and then you're working at fascial interfaces essentially to help restore glide and help with movement. You're getting increased awareness at that area because you're touching the area. And then you will also have that ischemic response. And I think that the way that it's been promoted thus far is you're not training with it on, you're putting it on, you will get a rebound effect, if you will, where it holds blood in the area, but you also don't get new blood to the area. You take it off and you get that rush to the area, which helps bring groceries in, is what they say, groceries in, garbage out, which can help if there's like a long-standing tendinosis, things like that there. So that's, I believe, how they're talking about and marketing voodoo bands as it relates to the vascular system. They haven't done or put out, not that I've seen, they haven't put out there yet anything with BFR, but obviously you can use that for BFR. Originally it was used, like I said, bodybuilders, and they would just use the like their knee wraps, which is, you know, not a knee sleeve, like the knee wrap to cut off, to occlude the area. So yeah, voodoo band could be used the same way now.
You know, I wonder too, just like what bodybuilder stumbled upon that discovery.
Hey?
Like, dude, check this out.
Yeah. It was about the greater pump.
It is, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's this striving for the greater pump. You've seen Arnold's video, pumping iron?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what
that was so funny. I watched it too when he was governor, and I was like, "What is this?"
You must watch it. For all of you those listening, if you have not seen it, it's on Netflix. I believe it used to be anyway. I bought it, but go see Pumping Iron.
It's really good.
Testament of the time.
No, I just remember he's like sitting there and he's talking about how pumping iron is like having sex or something.
Yep, it's the whole thing, and you're like, all right, man.
You're like, okay,
yeah, it's a lifestyle.
Okay.
So going back to the 3 X's, moving on to experimentation, what are you most currently tinkering with, personally and professionally?
As for that video, I'm currently tinkering with cold exposure and breath. That is, again, something that if you're on social media, you're seeing everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know, what the heck is this about? I've always been a big proponent of breathing, as most people should be, so you stay alive. But I've been a big proponent of training the breath and how it can be incorporated with treatment. And I personally hate the cold. I moved across the country because I hate the cold. I'm leaving New York. It's too cold. I hate the snow. I'm moving to California. And for me, when you're seeing all this cold exposure stuff, my initial reaction is, why would you ever do that to yourself?
Yeah.
And so the next step logically for me is, I should try it then, right? To figure that out, because you're seeing all these benefits, or you're seeing other people do it. And so it's kind of like, why? What's going on? Why are people doing this? Is it just a trend? What's going on? I also get very bad foot cramps and hand cramps in the cold. And I was like, maybe this is something that can help with it, because nothing else has really done much to help with them. And so I started following and reading up about Wim Hof. I then went to, within the past 2 months, went to his experience. It's like 4-hour experience on Saturday. That's why I did the first cold bath and looked into some of the breathing techniques that he talks about. And then I went to a fantastic course the following week, which is put on by Brian McKenzie and Rob Wilson. They are part of Power Speed Endurance. And there's the art of breathing, and it was their exposure course. So it went over breathing, it went over cold exposure, and it also went over heat exposure, which I loved. That was my favorite part. And playing around with that and giving you the science behind, hey, these are the benefits that can be afforded by it. This is how you can use it at not just for general well-being, but for performance enhancing, for training methodology, for recovery. And there's a lot going on there. And I think this is going to be a big thing. It's going to continue to be a big thing for a while. Because all that's out there right now is people are seeing Wim Hof breathing techniques, that super ventilation technique. And hey, he goes in the cold. He's the Iceman. That's all that people kind of know right now. Brian McKenzie, Rob Wilson, they're bringing to the forefront, hey, you can use this for training. You don't have to use it just for stress management. You can use this to improve your response to stress. You can use this to improve your resiliency. You can use this in lieu of traditional physical training. It's pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, that's so cool. We recently podcasted with Bria White, and she was also at that clinic. So
it's great. Great stuff.
You guys have,
I don't know.
I was going to say similar reviews, so I think the art of breathing should be next on our list, Jared.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I regret being there the day before and not staying a day later to attend.
So I flipped it. I didn't go to the first day. So you were there then they did like all the rowing stuff?
Oh no, I was there on Friday before it started. Like I was visiting CrossFit LA.
Okay. So you were literally there just before it.
Yeah.
Missed the whole thing.
Yeah, they broke it up into two things. On day one, it was the art of breathing, and it was like they talked about like showing you how you can tie it in with performance and things like that. I went to the second day, which was the art of breathing, and the subtitle is exposure, and that's when you get, because I wanted to get the hot, cold, and breathing, not just learning about the breathing. I believe the first day was really focused on the breath and things like that. So I wanted all three. So definitely take it. Definitely take it.
So how have you been approaching coaching breathing with your clients?
So as always, it depends. It's going to depend on what their dysfunction is, if they have a specific dysfunction, and what our goal is. If I have someone that's just stressed out, and I think that's a big driver for them, then I'm just working on breathing to downregulate the nervous system. I'm not giving them this tremendous amount of homework, and then suddenly it becomes another stressor for them. Like, I have to do this thing, I didn't do it, and now I'm dying. Right. All this stuff. So for that person, I'm just having them start to learn what diaphragmatic breathing is, or how you can use the breath to downregulate things. I'm letting them incorporate it within their regular day-to-day. Typically, I tell people, do it at night. You're laying in your bed, this is what I want you to work on. Most people fall asleep, which is a good thing. I need you to sleep and calm down.
Right.
So for that patient, I'm just having them work on breathing. Typically, I start people off with a diaphragmatic breathing technique, right? They're on their back, whatever's comfortable, one hand over the chest, one hand over the belly, kind of abdomen region, and just working on getting them to shift the breath. I really try to be very cautious about letting the pendulum swing too far and being too dogmatic with any methodology. Right? People are like, oh, you must diaphragmatically breathe. Listen, if you're a dancer, that may look ugly, and they don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
I want to know, can you do that? I'm not saying you have to always do that. Do you have movement variability? Do you have ownership of your movement? And then you can pick and choose when you use what technique you want to use.
Right.
For the person that is living as a chest breather, living as a neck breather, I'm saying you've lost some movement variability. Let's try and see if we can shift it, because we know that if we use these other techniques, taps into the diaphragm a little bit more, gets you a more parasympathetic state, that can calm you down. I am not saying you must always belly breathe. Just let's give you another tool in your movement arsenal. So for that person, that's where I'm attacking it. For the person that maybe has positional faults, that is really living in that chest breathing and then is getting that losing centration of their core and kind of having that arched, kind of broken position, that decreases your ability to pressurize the system. It decreases your ability to call on muscles of your core reflexively. For that person, I'm having them focus more on shifting the breath and using the breath for centration, and using I don't want to use the word posture, I don't like that word, but using it to help them get into better positions and having them focused on being in these positions while breathing. So we're both working on breathing in both categories, but it always depends on, one, the person that you're seeing, and two, what my desired goal is. Just giving them more movement for their toolbox, for their arsenal.
Any thoughts on nose breathing versus mouth breathing?
So it depends, and that was that art of breathing course is great. Wim Hof, great also, and I like things that are simple. Wim Hof's methodology appeals to so many people, and it works because it's so simple. And he says it. He's like, does not need to be complex. Just breathe. Yeah. And you got to start somewhere. People get so caught up in nuances of things that they don't even do anything. Right. You're like, is this right? Is this right? And then you do nothing. Just do something. So there are different benefits to breathing nasal versus mouth. Art of breathing goes over that because they start talking about using the breath as a training technique, which makes sense. That'd be like lifting heavy versus lifting lighter versus having more time under tension. It's the same concept. Got it. But the overarching theme would be just exercise. With breathing, it's just breathe. Right. Start there, and then we can dissect that and say, all right. Sense. Do we need to do more nasal because we're working on that passageway? We're working on allergies. Then maybe that's what we want to be doing. Nasal tends to tends to make you a little more utilize the diaphragm a little bit more. So maybe that's what we want to be doing. Or we're trying to shift it to the mouth and have the person train that way. So that art of breath course is nice because it introduces that concept and talks a bit more about the nuances.
Wow, awesome. Very cool. Yeah,
it is fascinating stuff.
It's really cool to see the different kinds of periodization and ways in which to skin the cat in these other domains, right? Like just as you said, okay, well, It's not like at first, yeah, like just breathe, just exercise. But now can we start talking about holding on the inhalation longer or holding on the exhalation longer?
Exactly.
And
it's awesome.
Yeah.
And things you don't think about doing, and you're like, oh, you made a great point earlier about, the yoga tune-up balls and the empowerment that you can get, because it's like, I can help myself. That's a big thing with breathing. You can help yourself. Yeah. I'm not breathing for you.
Yeah.
And you can do it on your own in any setting. And it's hugely empowering to people, because you can also treat or help improve so many things. And it's something that you have access to immediately. You don't have to go buy anything. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I never even really thought much about how much increasing someone's breath holding ability can also impart empowerment. And I talked about this when we podcasted with Bria, but I've been using Wim Hof's breathing with this volleyball team that I'm interning with as their mental skills coach. And it was amazing to me how much the girls got excited about just being able to hold their breath longer than previously. That was the takeaway for them of like, it was a confidence booster of like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So
that's my favorite part of a super ventilation. So I go through these drills, and Art of Breathing has like a daily thing that you can do, and they have like a whole membership thing, and that's my favorite. And I agree. It's something about maybe you don't feel victim, or not victim, you don't feel like you have to do this, and you're like, when you can hold your breath easily for a minute after your superventilation technique, it's something incredible. It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And that was the first experience I had at Wim Hof, and I was just like, I want to do that again, because I can hold my breath longer. I don't feel like, you don't feel scared. It keeps you in this state of like, I got this, I'm under control. It's not something outside of me. That's a great point you bring up. Great point.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it parallels very much to learning a martial art, right? It's like all of a sudden now you feel less, as you said, less of a potential victim.
Yeah.
In circumstances that may get out of your control.
Yeah, like, all right, I got this. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll live up with it.
I can survive any fight. I can hold my breath for 5 minutes.
It's like, that's huge.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. It's like, no one else can do that. Like, I'm going to be fine.
Right.
Yeah. All about that mindset.
Well, before we venture into the rapid fire segment, I do want to have you touch on theoretical models and frameworks. In the podcast with Joe DeLeo, I liked how you mentioned the necessity to have optionality of frameworks, because not everyone you see is going to fit into the same, or is going to best be paired with that theoretical model that you may have. But at the same time, I also realize the necessity to maybe kind of understand for yourself what are your few or essential ones that help you ground yourself in your own practice. So what advice can you give other coaches or practitioners about distilling their own philosophy of practice down to some essential theoretical models or frameworks to help guide how they serve others?
Absolutely. I would say, one, you have to have a system. You must. You have to start somewhere, but don't feel the need to simply take someone else's system and then just use it. I see people go into FRC, which is amazing. I see people go into NKT, which is also cool. And then that's all they do. Or IPA. And that's, if that has an acronym, that's, it's something. Right? They go into these things.
3 letters always wins.
That's it. Always. They go like, this is what I am. That's fine. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but to truly succeed, again, we are treating humans, not cars, not tables, living, breathing, dynamic systems. And to that end, your best bet is to expose yourself to as much as you can. And then instead of worrying about the differences between those courses and those methodologies, look for commonalities. Right? If this system has been around for a long time, and this system has been around for a long time, and this one too, that means they all have value and they all work in some way. Your job should be to figure out what it is about them that makes them all work. Is it because it's just nice? Is it because it's tapping into the nervous system? Is it because it's whatever? And then for me, I'm a big picture kind of person. Is I look for that, and then I take those things and tie it into to make one system. expose yourself to as much as you can, then practice it, and then go on to the next thing. I think people just, new grads especially, take a million courses, and then you can't apply anything because you haven't learned it.
Yeah.
Just undertreat it, whatever. So you gain all those tools for the toolboxes, and then you use them, and you figure out what tool fits best and when. And again, we're looking for commonalities. Why does this thing work? Why does that thing work? And why does that thing work? Typically, they're sharing some sort of underlying whatever, methodology, whatever, framework. Try to understand that. View the courses in terms of that. And then you create your system. And don't be afraid to create your own system. Right? People, I think, are nervous about that. I think that a lot of times when you go to courses, there's not a lot of new stuff out there, really. It's all just kind of that kaleidoscope of movement where you just twist it a little bit and you get this person's take on it, and you twist it a little bit and you get that person's take on it. You're allowed to twist it yourself and create your own take on things. I think when we go to courses, we're just looking for permission to try things. Like, is it okay if I do this?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Observation.
Yeah, it is. You're safe. Okay, go ahead. You can try and do that. So take the courses you can. Always ask why. Try to figure out the commonalities, and then build your system from there based on experimenting, practice.
So have you experienced attending a course and then coming back, let's say it was a weekend thing, you're back in your theoretical office on Monday, and then you're working with a client and you're sort of like in this space of cognitive dissonance because you're just like, oh, like this is what I normally do, but I was just told a bunch of that over the weekend, and now you're sort of like kind of queasy about what to do. And can you talk to that? And
absolutely,
what is that like?
So one of the main courses that I always recommend to people now is the SFMA, the Selective Functional Movement Assessment. I took that course, basically, I think it was maybe the second course I ever took when I graduated. And I didn't use the methodology for about 2 years. I took it back to clinic and I tried, and I couldn't fit it in just because of time, and I didn't really grasp it enough. And it took me a while to try and implement it. And part of it was that I was scared and nervous, and like it had talked about rolling. All I do now is rolling, but in that course, I wasn't ready to have my patients do it. And so, I went back and struggled with that. What I tell people when I teach at the end of my course is take one thing. Don't worry about taking everything from this course. I want you to take one thing and do it tomorrow. Yeah. If you don't try to change, you're not going to change because it's too hard, especially if you're in a traditional setting where you have a lot of patients. It's very, very difficult. So you have to force yourself. It's not like, oh, it's going to happen. You have to force yourself to sit with it and try it. So I tell people, take one thing. And usually I try to guide them as to what that one thing is. I talk about breathing and rolling in all of my courses. And I really emphasize the breathing thing because it's easy to implement. All right, it's not a fancy technique. Like, just try this and try it on everyone. And this way you start to learn. I know when I took a taping course, I went back and taped everyone. Nice. Not necessarily because I thought they needed it, because you have to experiment. I tape myself, I tape my friends, figuring out what's the most efficient, what's the most effective. Do I like this technique? Do I not like that technique? And then suddenly it's become somewhat integrated within your system, and you can go. If I ever find myself learning something at a course that I don't agree with, or I'm like, it doesn't make sense, then it becomes a matter of taking a step back and once again reminding yourself, one, we're treating humans, not tables. And so if it even benefits one person, there's value in it. You just have to kind of figure out what that value is and perhaps why or how it worked for that person. And then two, at the end of the day, if it really doesn't jive with you, you don't have to use it. It's another opinion that's out there. It's another technique that's out there. It's another provider that you can refer to for perhaps you get a patient that really wants that kind of treatment that maybe you don't agree with. Instead of me sitting there arguing with them, I can say, hey, go see Joe. He does things that way. And because I want you to get better. Even though if I don't believe in that methodology, you need to be able to explain why it did help someone, even if you don't believe in it. Like, okay, well, this is possibly why it helped. And it shouldn't just be, placebo effect. Placebo is not a dirty word. Right. Placebo, I think, speaks to the fact that we don't value the psychosocial component of things. And so we're like, oh, there's no objective changes. It must be in your head. That's crazy talk. Right. You feel better, and I'm happy about that. So if it doesn't sit well with me or I don't really approach treatment that way, but I think that that's what that person wants, then I know now I have a provider that I can send them to or resources I can send them to, and they'll still get better.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, no, I think that really brings light to the fact that like you're saying, you don't have to agree with everything, and it might work for some people. So don't go writing it off
Exactly.
on all the platforms so that you just look like a dick,
Exactly.
you know?
That's exactly what happens. You look like a dick. Like
No.
you cannot say, there's a lot of stuff going on out there about foam rolling, right? And like, don't foam roll your IT band.
Oh, yeah,
Let's take a step back. I don't think you should kill, smash, or be really aggressive to it, but plenty of people have found benefit and say, this makes me feel better. So I think as my job as a clinician is to say, why did it make them feel better? Why do people feel better? Okay, what is it about that treatment? All right, so maybe we can reframe this context and still foam roll, but then let's have you understand how it's working. And then that may help the prognosis with you doing other kinds of treatments, because now you're like, okay, I kind of understand that. Instead of being like, it doesn't work, stop doing it. Because it worked for them, so clearly there's something to it. You have to take a step back outside of yourself and then be like, all right, well, let's figure that out. Always ask why.
Yeah, I like your point too about, or just speaking from your own personal experience, that you took this course and it wasn't until 2 years later that you actually were able to integrate it or have enough time to come back to it, spend more time with it. And I know sometimes I've gotten better with the more courses I've taken, but in the beginning, man, coming home after a weekend course and just feeling so overwhelmed and anxious about like how to incorporate this in what I'm currently doing, especially if what was taught seems so counter to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
having that perspective of like, just let it sink in.
Let it sink in, let it marinate, take time. I'm the worst with that with books. I buy a book and then I don't read it for like a year.
Yeah, right.
There's just not enough time when you're just like, oh gosh, it's okay. Like people in a rush to like, I don't know what they're in a rush for. Take your time, let it marinate, understand things, let them happen, organically. It's okay, and then go from there.
Yes. Beautiful. All right. Well, are you ready for some rapid fire?
I'll make up the answers as best I can.
Okay, perfect. That's all we can ask. All right, so let's start here. This will be good. This is the first time I've asked this, and then the second part is the only time it's been asked was to Kelly Starrett. So First is, I'd like you to define moving well.
Okay.
What does that mean to you?
So I use Gray Cook's quotes a lot, and one of the things that he says is move well enough for health, then move often enough for fitness. Right? To me, moving well means, do you have the ability, the capacity, a lot of it's mobility, to perform that movement? And if you do not, are you working on it? Because if you're working on it, then that's cool with me too. Right? Do you have the capability? I think the snatch is the best example. Like, do you have the mobility to do that? No, your ankles suck, your thoracic spine sucks. Okay, maybe you shouldn't do that. You're not moving well. Are you working on gaining the mobility? Now I'm happy. Now we're working on moving well. Do you have the ability to do this? And then if you take that as a spectrum, then it becomes, does it look sexy? Basically, how well can you coordinate those movements and put things together? Like when you say that person moves really well, it means that they look like they're not having much effort. Mark Chang has a great quote: when a movement pattern is truly owned, there is no sign of strain. That person's moving well. It's easy. It's second nature to them. The first part of that is that they have the capability to even perform it. And from there, it becomes, how do they put the pieces together? That's the way I like to think about it.
Subsequently, what kind of responsibility should a coach of movement have to moving well? And part of that for you to consider is, what would be the non-negotiables?
Again, drawing from Gray Cook, stop stacking performance on dysfunction. I think people are like, let's do it stronger, let's lift more weight, let's go faster. You move like crap, let's start there. All right, let's go back to the basics. Do you own the fundamental patterns? Oh, hey, breathing is the most fundamental movement pattern we have, by the way. Let's start there. Do you own the basics? That's a non-negotiable. you know, you don't have to be the master and like you look the most amazing, you never made a mistake, but can you perform this stuff? If you have errors in that, let me start there and then go from there. I know it becomes difficult if you look at the typical training model, it can become difficult because you're trying to keep that person interested. And sometimes they want the sexy movement, but they don't realize that the sexy movements are grounded in these foundational things. And so as a coach, it's your job to instill that and make them recognize the benefit of that. Practice what you preach.
Beautiful. Any topic, fitness, nutrition, or psychology related that has you most on the fence in your current practice?
I would say like body tempering and being really, really aggressive with manual treatment. I see that, yes, again, people like it and are benefiting from it. Body tempering and like the really aggressive tool work where people are all bruised up. I do not agree with that at all.
A lot of that
Graston stuff. So, you know, Graston has gone back on how they're teaching it, and they're taking a much less aggressive approach. And when we teach our blades course, it's not aggressive at all. There's no bruising, nothing like that. But basically any modality that's manual, it's a tool or whatever, and it's very aggressive, I am on the fence with that because I don't think that necessarily is needed. Have people found benefit in it? Yes. I think that one of the ways is that biopsychosocial model where people think they need to be crushed. So if you crush them, they feel better. My question is, do they need to actually be crushed? Yeah, I'm like, do they need that? Or, you know, if there's not bruising and stuff left, okay. But when people are getting all bruised up, you're just like, all that you've done is threaten that nervous system. If I punch you and it leaves a bruise, you know that's bad. Yeah. If I take a tool and leave a bruise, suddenly it's good. It doesn't make any sense. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference. It's trauma. Trauma is trauma there. So I think that we can probably back up a little bit. And it's kind of dangerous because social media, people like quick fixes. People like what's flashy. People like things that are visually stimulating. If I do a tool work and I don't leave any marks on you, it becomes very difficult to put that as a social media post. They're like, oh, what'd you do? Even though they may be moving better, feeling great. If I leave all these bruises on your back, for some reason, suddenly people are like, oh, you must have done a good job there. And I think it's creating a lot of thought viruses. And so that's something that I'm definitely on the fence with and not, or maybe I'm not even on the fence. I'm on this side of the fence and worried about the other side.
Thought viruses.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So.
What is your biggest coaching/teaching pet peeve?
Again, it ties into what we were just talking about. No pain, no gain. That needs to change.
Yes. 100%.
Pain is a request for change, not punishment. We have to. I love that you brought up explain pain and that you're talking to people about it because we need to become more literate, more educated on pain and just our bodies and how we work. More is not better. Better is better. There's a very different ways that we can approach things. And, you know, I was reading something by Rob Wilson the other day, and it's something along the lines of like, basically, are we actually training and improving physiology, or are we just getting better at suffering?
Oh, Bria mentioned that same quote. Yeah.
It's like, let's think about what we're actually doing here. No pain, no gain. We gotta back away from that.
Yeah, I saw. I was at one gym where, before you entered, you know, they have on the wall rules of the gym, and one of the rules was train like you've just been punched in the mouth.
So aggressive. I wouldn't train. I'd be going to the doctor.
And I'm like, what? What just happened?
I'm going to the dentist.
And so again, just
be angry.
The power of words and framing an experience before the person's even had the experience strikes me as really wrong.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I was like, I've never been punched in the mouth, and I don't think, you know, I'm trying to actively avoid it in most of my days.
Want that. So yeah, you need to probably fix that model a little bit.
What are you working on as a coach?
I'm working on trying to be better at understanding. I know for me that I'm all about movement, and that's a big thing. It comes a little bit easier. When people reach out to me, I alluded to this before, when they reach out to me asking about change, that's a big thing. Like, I want to change my job. I want to change my life, whatever. It is very easy for me to say, yeah, you have to take the leap. Because at the end of the day, it's what you have to do. You have to take the leap. You can't have one foot back. You can't do it. You have to take the leap. it becomes frustrating when you check in with that person a week, 2 weeks, a month later, and nothing has changed. You know, I left that model of treatment where you see the patient twice a week for 6 to 8 weeks. And I think sometimes the patient gets better just because they've been there for 6 to 8 weeks and not doing anything that hurt them originally.
Right.
I left that model, and now my model with treatment is such that I see people once every few weeks, or sometimes just once, right? And I put it on them to get better. And when it relates to movement and the people that are coming to see me, they're motivated, and so they do it. And people tend to get better. The majority of my patients get better. When it comes to this new thing that I'm working with kind of coaching and life change, a lot of times people don't change because it's really hard. They have kids, they have responsibilities. And so I'm working to understand that because I'm on the other side of that now. And so it becomes hard to remember, like, yeah, change is really freaking scary. Yeah. I'm reading a Brene Brown book right now, Rising Strong.
Yes.
Try and get a better grasp on like that process. That's something I got to work on.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good book too.
She's
and
awesome.
I think as far as change goes, I think in fear of change, people are willing to put up with a lot of stuff for a lot longer.
For so long. And I think people change when they just can't take it anymore. Yeah. And how much they hate the situation overrides their fear. That was me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. I put up with that for so long. I hated where I was at. I would wake up on Friday and be sad it was almost Monday because I was like, I have to go back to work again soon. Oh, and you put up with it until you're just like, I can't do this anymore. Something has to give. So I'm working on understanding that process a little bit more and understanding the what you go through to get to that end result.
Mm-hmm. Gotta take the leap. And it's very scary because your eyes are closed. You don't know what's on the other side.
You don't, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. I put that quote up the other day. If you have the courage to change, you have the courage to succeed. You just gotta go for it.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Right.
Lastly, what does it mean to you to practice what you preach?
So as Perry would say, you got to get in the arena and bleed. Right? You have to have some skin in the game. If you have to give value to your words. People see you doing it, they start to believe it. I think one of the most powerful things about, again, I'm all about commonalities. You look at Wim Hof methodology, you look at CrossFit. I'm a big CrossFit person. A lot of that works because people see other people doing it and they said, holy smokes, they did it. They can do it. That person can do it. I can do it. Or why can't I do it? And as a coach, that's where you can come into play and be like, yeah, I did it. I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. You can do it too. I'm not some superhuman. I'm not this gigantic muscular person. And now I'm, extraordinary feats. I'm an average Joe like you. And I can do it. You can do it. That's what CrossFit has shown people. That's what Wim Hof methodology has shown people. It's like, this man has climbed this mountain with no shoes. All those people climbed this mountain with shorts on. I don't really want to do that, but like, hey, maybe I could do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Change their mind frame, their mindset already. Put some skin in the game. Give value to your words.
Give value to your words. That is fantastic.
Well, maybe you should make a video of you climbing a mountain in shorts and get another.
Oh my God, that would blow up. If I was crying, I was like, oh, look what I did. It would blow up. People watching me suffer.
Multiple plays.
Well, on that note, we will wrap it up. This has been really, really, really awesome. Thank you so much, Shante.
Thank you, guys. This has been truly my pleasure. I love being able to chat with people, like-minded individuals, and just rap. And this has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for this opportunity and for putting up with my technical difficulties, power outages and stuff. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, no, I have so many good notes that'll live over on behindthepodiumpodcast.com. But in the meantime, where can people find you on the internet and hang out?
On the interwebs, the best place to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram name is The Movement Maestro, all one word, Maestro being spelled Maestro. I post on Twitter, I post on Facebook, but I'm the most interactive on Instagram. And then my website is www.themovementmaestro.com.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom and encouragement, and now I want to just go play with stuff right now and do some occlusion and go for a jog and just have a great day.
Work on breathing.
Yes.
Thanks again, guys. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. If you are enjoying the show, please, we would love a review and sharing it with friends and family and anyone else that is a coach, or yourself or others that are being coached. So again, until next time.
Bye.
Adios, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Behind the Podium, Unveiling the Coach. If you have enjoyed what you listened to, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. More information on each episode and the podcast in general can be found at behindthepodiumpodcast.com. We'll catch you next time.